Thank you for tuning in tonight to Saving Democracy. I really want to put out there what's going on in the political environment in a unbiased view. So I hope you enjoy, and here we go. We have to use our common sense. What I'm a little perturbed by is everybody's kind of running around talking about, how was the FISA warrant gotten? Basically, the debate is that the Steele dossier was the um, precipice for this FISA warrant to be issued. Now, if anybody knows anything about FISA warrants, and these are with federal judges, and you have to present pretty significant evidence. So let's just go on the premise that maybe they did use the Steele dossier. And the argument is that the Steele dossier was put together by Democrats who were trying to get dirt on Donald Trump. First of all, that's factually untrue. The original people who started that were the Republicans. They were the ones who hired Fusion GPS to get dirt on Donald Trump because they didn't want him to be the candidate. So then what happens is the Democrats take this over, which is given to them by the Republicans. Republicans say, we don't want this anymore. And so the Democrats take over with the Fusion GPS and the so-called dossier. Now, forgetting it again, whether you're Republican or you're Democrat, the bottom line is this. There was major serious allegations that were put into the dossier. Now, Christopher Steele is a MI6, retired MI6 operative. This is a person who was trained in surveillance, counterintelligence. And basically what he did was he put together an actual dossier on what he thought the Russians may have had on then candidate Donald Trump. So the dossier somehow gets leaked to BuzzFeed. Now, again, I'm not going to try to say, Steele is this, James Bond type guy and he didn't leak it himself. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is the facts that were inside of that dossier are starting to become factual reality. And let's talk about what is factual reality and what isn't. First of all, the salacious stuff, let's just throw that out. Okay, which is not much, but there's a few of that in there. Throw that out because, to be quite honest with you, I don't really care what a person's doing in another country, if they're getting hookers or whatever. That's none of my business. Honestly, I really don't care. Whatever he does there, that's his thing. I don't really view that as serious, what they like to call compromise. Okay, people have done much worse. So I don't think, especially after the Access Hollywood tape, that anyone's really going to care if Donald Trump was with some hookers in Russia. So let's throw that out. Let's focus on what is in the dossier that has been proven to be factual. What is in the dossier that has been proven to be factual is people in the campaign, Donald Trump's campaign, were not just talking to the Russians, they were colluding. Now, you may say, how do you know they're colluding? Well, we already have an email from Don Jr. saying Russians want to meet, they have dirt on Hillary Clinton. He says, great, or love it, whatever the term was, and then he takes a meeting. Well, that's collusion. There is no other definition of it. They went to the meeting. No matter what happened in that meeting, they were under the guise that they were going to be able to get bad information or damaging information on their political opponent. Now we get into what I like to call the seriousness of this stuff, because collusion really is a difficult thing to people to wrap their minds around, and I want to talk about that a little bit. Collusion, in the way that it's being represented in the mainstream media, is kind of like not a big deal. Most people are like, oh, well, if you colluded with the Russians, who cares? A lot of people do that to get opposition research on their political opponent. Let me explain why collusion with a foreign power that's an adversary is not a good thing. They usually have an ulterior motive. The Russians didn't come to Donald Trump to say, hey, we want to help you get elected, and we want to give you this damaging information on your opponent because we really like the United States and we want to help you guys out. That's not anywhere remotely true. The Russians want to undermine our democracy every step they can. And if they can put into power a president that they can control or that they can manipulate, then they have hit a home run. I can't even put into words how great it would be if the Russians were able to manipulate and control our president. That would allow them to free themselves from sanctions. That would allow them to have this person open up policy that would be beneficial for the Russian government. It would also open up policy that would benefit the Russian people who have been barred from operating in the United States, which basically is shady people who are connected with the KGB or have done things that are illegal here in the United States, and they've been sanctioned. So, getting back to the collusion part, that's a bad thing. But, again, like I said, this is a difficult thing because people are having a hard time wrapping their head around collusion. And to be quite honest, there's so many ways that the mainstream media has been muddying the waters on this. You've got one side basically saying it's not an illegal act, and even if they did collude, it's no big deal. You have another side saying, well, if they colluded, it's a terrible thing, whatever. The way I look at it is this. If there was collusion done, first of all, it's a low in the history of our country. Whether or not you want to prosecute somebody for that, or they should be prosecuted for that, legally, I don't know how that works. In my heart of hearts, being an American citizen, I think it's a traitorous act, and it should be treated as such. Because it's not like they got together with the Canadians and got some information. These are people that want to undermine us. So for that would be the equivalency of treason. Now, everybody got up in arms when Edward Snowden exposed the fact that people were being surveilled in the country basically since 9/11. So another thing that kind of pops into my head right now as we're talking about this subject, if you're surprised that anybody was surveilled, especially if they were communicating with a foreign adversary while running for president, you'd have to be living under a rock. Our government has been spying and taking metadata on all U.S. citizens since 9/11. Now, is it good? Is it bad? Again, I'm not here to debate that. What I'm here to do is put the facts out and say this is where we're at right now. But there is some things that I think we need to put the light on, because there's people are being misled by the mainstream media on all sides, not on just one, but on all sides. So we've kind of gone through what is the probably the main things of the Steele dossier, which again is the salacious material. What, like I said, we've thrown that on, get that out of the way. We're not even going to pay attention to that. But we are going to pay attention to the more serious allegations. Now let's talk about what's called compromise. And this is what Steele writes in the dossier as what the Russians refer to as what we would call compromising information on another human being. And I think anybody who has ever, done business or, had any interaction with anybody would agree that if I take money from you, I am going to owe you a favor unless I can pay that money back to you. It's not like now if you loan me money and I pay you back, it's a little different. But if I come to you and I say to you, hey, I can't pay this back ever, just give me money, then I owe you a favor. If you come to me and say, hey, my car's broke down and it's 2 a.m. in the morning, I got to get out of bed and go get you because you lent me money. And that's on a small scale. The allegations inside of this document is hundreds of millions of dollars are being laundered here in the U.S. by the Trump Organization for Russian oligarchs. And if that is true, and it looks more and more to be that way if you look at Mueller's investigation, I mean, we have Paul Manafort and Gates already under indictment for money laundering for the Russian government or Russian oligarchs. You have General Flynn, who is pled guilty because he talked to the Russians about alleviating the sanctions once the Trump administration took power. And then you have George Papadopoulos, who we now know because of the Nunes memo that came out today, that he's one of the main reasons the FBI got involved in this thing. Because he was talking to the Prime Minister in Australia and was bragging about Russian contacts. Now, I'm no, CIA or FBI analysis person or field agent. But I got to tell you, where there's a lot of smoke, there's got to be some fire. And if we have a president who is money laundering, the only reason you would money launder is because you're hurting for money. In other words, if you were doing so well, if Donald Trump was a multi-billionaire and had all these properties and was just rolling in the dough, you would never get involved with money laundering. People that are rich and have money, they don't break the law because they don't want to lose the wonderful life that they have. It makes no sense unless you were getting that money illegally to start with, like a drug dealer or somebody like that. That's a little different. But he's claiming he's self-made, went out there, was a real estate mogul who made billions of dollars by transacting real estate. So if that's the case, then you would never get involved with money laundering. The fact that the dossier is becoming more and more credible is a frightening thing, and it should be frightening to every single American out there. Let's just talk about money laundering for one more second here. And again, these are all allegations. Nothing has been proven yet. However, based on what Robert Mueller is zoning in on and the people he hired, that's what they specialize in. It's money laundering. And it looks like there's been a lot of obstruction of justice and money laundering based on what we've seen so far. Now, whether the president was involved or not, we don't know that yet. But let's look at a few things that makes it seem a little maybe shady is, I guess, the best term we can use. The fact that Congress sent a unanimous sanction bill to the president against Russia for Russian meddling in the 2016 election, and the fact that he refused on Monday to enact those sanctions should speak volumes. Because let's go back to what I was saying earlier. If the Russians had something on Donald Trump, they would want to use that in order to fix policy that would be beneficial to them. So obviously, if sanctions aren't imposed on them, that benefits Russia. That doesn't benefit us. And by the way, since everybody in the world agrees that the Russians meddled in our elections, and I'm not saying they meddled to the point where they, Donald Trump won just because of the Russians. I'm staying right down the middle on this. They interfered with our elections. Forget about what the outcome of that was. They interfered in our election. And our president and his administration has done nothing in order to even investigate it, nor go after it in any way, shape, or form. However, he did form a committee to try to prove that millions of illegals voted in the past election. And then quietly, when he found out that that wasn't the case, he dissolved it. By the way, the findings on that, they found 4 people. 4. This man's talking about millions. But anyways, let's get back to what I was saying. Why in the world would not just our president, but the people he's surrounded around him, the chief of staff, secretary of state, why is there no sanctions being imposed on Russia when we know what they did in the elections? This should concern all Americans right now. Because if there is any way that Russia has leverage on this president, and forget about leverage of the salacious, again, like I said, throw that out, that's nothing. But if he owes hundreds of millions of dollars to a foreign power, that is a major problem, because he will have to do whatever he's told, or there'll be repercussions, probably that I couldn't even imagine, nor could you. We're not dealing with a normal person here. We're dealing with Vladimir Putin and the Russia regime, who has already been known to kill opponents of his by poisoning them. I mean, these are facts. Again, sticking to the facts, just laying it out there. These are real facts. This is happening. Now, getting back to the Nunes memo. This memo is, I can't even comprehend how bad this memo is because of the fact that it was written by Devin Nunes' staff. It's not like this is an FBI document that was released and there's information in there that's, groundbreaking. And I got to be honest, what's in there, even if it is true, doesn't exonerate anybody. Let me be clear. If you are doing something that is illegal or treasonous with a foreign power, either colluding or money laundering or trying to get sanctions released from them so that they can have an easier in to the United States, then guess what? I'm glad you got caught. And I don't care if somebody had to bend the rules a little bit to get you. This is the equivalency of if you were robbing a bank and I was speeding there to get you and I ran 3 red lights and at the end of it, you didn't go to prison because I ran 3 red lights. That's how idiotic Devin Nunes's memo is. And it's reckless. First of all, it's reckless to paint the FBI that they would come up with some massive conspiracy to attack Donald Trump and his presidency. Could you imagine how many people that would even take to accomplish? That is not what's happening here. Again, let's stick with the facts. What is happening here is people, so far, many people on Donald Trump's transition team and now working in the White House have committed crimes. And they are being taken down systemically, one by one. Now, I don't know if the president in the end of this is going to get caught up, but I got to tell you, it's looking pretty bad. Because everybody kept saying they had nothing to do. No deals with Russia, nothing going on with Russia. I've never even been to Russia, they said. And now we're finding out not only were they doing all these things, but they were actually trying to help the Russians. Whether it was by money laundering or whether it was by easing sanctions. These are treasonous acts. And we're being blinded by this nation who's now divided because of this election. And now the mainstream media is taking full advantage of this. You have one network who is taking the far right, and you have another network who's taking the far left. And all they're doing is dividing us. And you're not sticking to the facts. You're getting caught up in who's right, who's wrong. It doesn't matter. Just look at the facts. They will lead you to who's right and who's wrong. The thing you have to set aside, and it's really hard to do, is your own ego. Because if you voted for the wrong person, or a person who's caught up in this, you're going to have some pain on that. People don't like to admit when they're wrong. And let's go one step further. Because I know everybody knows I'm talking about Donald Trump and what he's doing right now. The spotlight's on him. The reason the spotlight is on him is because he is the clear and present danger. He's the president, for God's sakes. And I haven't forgot about Hillary Clinton and her 30,000 emails and smashing her phones with hammers. Absolutely, she should be investigated, and absolutely, she should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law for whatever crimes she's committed. But I got to tell you something. First and foremost, if the president is doing these things that are either in this dossier or what the FBI has already uncovered or what Mueller's already uncovered, he has to be taken down first. Then go after Hillary Clinton. And I will go for a step further right now tonight. Both Republican and Democrats, sitting senators and congressmen right now, need to be purged. It was a disgrace to sit here and watch them shut down the government while they still get paid by our hard-earned tax dollars. But yet the guy that's out there sweeping the floor, he doesn't get paid. Or she doesn't get paid. That is absurd. And as American citizens, we should be outraged over that. So this isn't a Republican or a Democrat thing. They're all corrupt. We need to purge everyone that is in Washington that is not working for the benefit of the American people. That is why they are there. We put them there, and we should be able to take them out. The fact that we are afraid as a nation, and we're afraid when they make horrific decisions on whatever it is that you feel passionate about, whether you're passionate about immigration, whether you're passionate about, conservation, whether you're passionate about illegal immigrants coming into the country. I don't care what it is. No one in Washington is watching out for your benefit. That's a fact. So let's set aside our differences, because the differences that we have are not our differences. It's the idiots in Washington. We're Americans. We should all band together and do what's best for us. Why should 1% of the population right now get to enjoy all the benefits of any big land deals, the stock market, everything? It used to be that people used to get upset that when you worked and taxes were taken out of your paycheck, that you were taking care of the poor or the welfare recipients. Well, you're not. You know where your money's going now? To take care of the elite in Washington and to help take care of the 1%. Because the elite in Washington keep passing laws that only help the 1%. So as I wind this down as my first podcast, I really hope that I stayed on point as far as staying down the middle. I'd love feedback, and I'm going to do this on a weekly basis, maybe even more. As things happen in the news, I think I want to come on, I want to talk about them. And again, I hope we as Americans can come together and turn this around. Because right now, the way things are, it's a total disaster. Thank you for tuning in, and have a good evening.